Hello, I'm Marilyn Hudson, and sometimes I am known as the Ghost Teller. Now, let me tell you a little story. I collect stories all over. People will tell me things that they sometimes won't tell anyone else. An off-duty police officer shared this with me. He said it was from his early days as he patrolled the beat in northeast Oklahoma City. It was an old area just off of the famed Route 66. And back in the good old days, the 1920s and 30s, it was a popular place for gangsters, their malls, prohibitionists running gin, and a lot of other interesting people. It was also an area that was pretty close to a small, sluggish creek. And when the temperature would get just right, a fog would grow. It would pull out of those ravines and curl and crawl across the landscape, coming across the roads, slowing traffic down to a crawl. And so the police officer often had to go patrol that area, just in case there was a stranded motorist that might not be seen by an oncoming vehicle and be lost in that fog and hurt. Or who might have an accident because the fog obscured the landscape and missed a turn. So he knew his job was very important. So that's what he did. He went out and he patrolled. And on this particular night, it was damp. It was drizzling. And sure enough, as he came to that one section of road, he saw those long tendrils of fog crawling out from the ravines and creeping across the road that glistened in the rain. So he slowed down his vehicle. And he noticed that the fog was in bands, and he'd pass through one white world and then break out into a band where he saw just the damp, dark road, and then another band. And this would repeat over and over. And as he was slinking out slowly through those bands of fog, he saw over to the side of the road, there was a woman. And she was striding down the side of the road, and she had that look about her that said she was angry. She was really angry. And she was dressed to the nines. She was in a black slinky gown that had these spangles all over her. And when she moved, they glistened and sparkled in the headlights from the car. And she walked and she walked and she walked, and her shoulders were back and her head was high. And he said, I've seen that look before. My wife gets that look. She is really mad. So he turned on his lights, flashed his lights. He honked his horn. He tried to get her attention, but she just kept right on marching from one band of fog right into the other, there at the side of the road. It seemed like she paid no attention to the drizzling rain. Finally, he got upset enough that he pulled up his mic and he hit the button. And he had the horn on the top of his car that said, "Pull over, police." But she didn't stop. So he followed her again, getting a little bit more angry now. He was an officer of the law. She needed to stop when he called. And so he followed her and followed her. And she never stopped. Until finally they came to one last band of fog. And as the car crept out, he saw that there at the side of the road, she stood. The headlights and the moonlight would come out now, glisten on the spangles of her black dress. And he saw that she was dressed in a style that hadn't been seen for decades. Tall shoes, dark hose, that low-waisted, spangly dress, a choker around her neck, and a little hat with a feather pressed out to the side. She was dressed to kill. But as he watched, she turned and she looked toward him. And he could see that there was a piece of jewelry that was very odd. It went from one side of her neck to the other. It glittered black down. And he realized that that was blood. Her neck had been cut. And as he realized this, he gasped and he looked up into her face and he caught the glow in her eyes. She stared at him. And she moved her mouth as if she wanted to speak, to say something. But then she shook her head and she stepped back, disappearing into the fog. He searched for her for hours. He reported a woman in distress, a motorist in distress. He didn't know what else to call it. But he drove up and down that road and he was not able to find her. And though he searched for many a cloudy, foggy night after that, he never saw her again. But whenever he would drive that particular length of road, he saw that fog creeping out across the highway. He thought of her. And he wondered who she was and what had happened to her. In his mind, he just called her the floozy in the fog. She seemed out of place, out of time, and out of this reality. So if you ever drive that part of Oklahoma City and you see fog creeping out across the road, you might want to speed up just a little bit and move past the area as quickly as you can. Thank you. I'm the ghost teller, Marilyn A. Hudson. I hope you enjoyed my story.